Seren did not know the great hall was filled with a pack in mourning. She did not know the Alpha, standing rigid by the cold hearth, had clawed 2 graves into frozen earth that morning, his hands still raw and bleeding beneath the bandages. And she definitely did not know that stumbling through those doors with 2 bundled pups pressed against her chest would shatter every truth the Thornwood pack believed and ignite a hunt that would end in either salvation or blood. All she knew was that if she stopped moving, she would die. And if she died, the pups died with her. The blizzard had been hunting her for 3 days. 3 days of wading through snow that reached her hips, of rationing the last scraps of dried meat between herself and 2 infants who could not understand why the world had turned so cold. Her cloak was frozen stiff, her lips cracked and bleeding, and she had lost feeling in her feet somewhere around the second night. But the lights of the Thornwood stronghold had flickered through the storm like a promise, and Seren had dragged herself toward them with the last reserves of strength she possessed. The massive oak doors groaned as she pushed against them. They were not locked. In her fractured state of mind, she found that strange. What pack left their doors unbarred during a storm like this? She stumbled inside and immediately felt the weight of 100 stairs. The great hall was cavernous, built from ancient timber and stone that had witnessed generations of wolves. Torches lined the walls, their flames casting long shadows across a crowd dressed in black. Mourning clothes, funeral colors. The silence was absolute, broken only by the howl of wind behind her and the soft whimper of one of the pups stirring against her chest. Serene's vision swam. She tried to speak, but her throat was raw, frozen, and useless. All she could do was stand there, swaying like a dead tree in the wind, clutching 2 small bundles wrapped in what remained of her shredded cloak. Then she saw him. He stood near the front of the hall, elevated on a stone dais where 2 small wooden coffins rested side by side. Empty coffins, she would later learn. Symbolic vessels for bodies that were never recovered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell past his jaw, and eyes the color of a winter sky just before the sun disappeared entirely. Those eyes were hollow, devastated. The eyes of a man who had already buried his heart and was simply waiting for his body to follow. But when his gaze landed on her, something shifted. His nostrils flared, his body went rigid, and then his eyes dropped to the bundles in her arms, and Seren watched the color drain from his face entirely. She tried to take a step forward. Her knees buckled instead, and she crashed to the stone floor, curling her body around the pups to protect them from the impact. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her hip, her skull. But she did not let go. She would never let go. Footsteps thundered toward her. Voices erupted, overlapping, frantic. Hands reached for her, tried to pry her arms open, and Seren snarled with a ferocity that surprised even her. "Do not touch them." The words scraped out of her ruined throat like broken glass. "Do not touch them until I know they are safe. Those are my pups." The voice cut through the chaos like a blade, deep, commanding, shattered at the edges. The crowd parted and suddenly he was there, kneeling before her, his face inches from hers. Up close, she could see the dark circles beneath his eyes, the hollows in his cheeks, and the tremor in his hands as he reached toward the bundles. "Those are my children. They died 3 weeks ago. We buried them this morning." Seren met his gaze and held it. "They did not die," she whispered. "But they will if you do not let me explain." One of the pups chose that moment to cry, a thin, reedy wail that echoed through the silent hall like a thunderclap. And the Alpha's composure shattered completely. Chaos erupted. The wail of the pup ignited something primal in the crowd. Wolves surged forward, voices rising in disbelief and desperate hope. Someone was shouting orders. Someone else was weeping openly. And through it all, the Alpha remained frozen on his knees, staring at the squirming bundle in Seren's arms like he was witnessing a ghost take form. "Rowan," His voice cracked on the name. His hand hovered over the bundle, trembling violently, as if terrified that touching the child would prove this was all a cruel illusion. "Is that my son?" Serene's arms tightened instinctively. Both of them, Rowan and Briar, they are alive. They are healthy. But there are people who want them dead, and if you do not clear this hall right now, everyone here becomes a witness who can be silenced. The words landed like a physical blow. The Alpha's eyes snapped to hers and she saw it, the shift from grief to something far more dangerous, the predator waking beneath the broken father. Everyone out. He did not raise his voice, but the command carried the weight of absolute authority. "Theron, secure the doors. No one enters or leaves without my permission." A man with copper-colored hair and a warrior's build immediately began herding the crowd toward the exits. There were protests, confused murmurs, but no one dared defy a direct order. Within minutes, the great hall was empty save for Seren, the Alpha, and the silent sentinel who had taken position by the barred doors. "Now." The Alpha's voice was ice and iron. "Explain. Where did you find my children? How are they alive? We tracked their scent to the river. We found blood. We found their blankets torn apart by wolves." "Yes, that was the point." Seren forced herself to sit up despite the screaming protest of her frozen muscles. "You were meant to believe they drowned. You were meant to stop searching. Whoever took them was counting on your grief to blind you." "Whoever took them?" The words came out low and lethal. "You know who did this." "I know pieces. Enough to keep them alive. Enough to bring them here." Seren met his gaze without flinching. "Not enough to tell you who inside your own pack betrayed you." The silence that followed was suffocating. "You are accusing one of my wolves of stealing my children." His tone was deceptively calm, but she could see the rage building behind his eyes, a storm gathering strength. "Of staging their deaths, of making me bury empty coffins while my pups were somewhere out there in the cold. I am not accusing anyone yet. I am telling you what I know." Seren shifted the bundles carefully, and both pups whimpered in their sleep. "Someone inside these walls arranged for your children to disappear. Someone close enough to know the nursery routines, the guard rotations, and the river path your trackers would follow. And whoever it was, they did not act alone. They had help from outside, from a pack that has been waiting for the Thornwood line to end." The Alpha went very still. "How do you know this?" His voice was barely a whisper now, dangerous in its quietness. "Who are you?" Serene's vision began to blur at the edges. The cold had taken more from her than she realized, and consciousness was slipping away like sand through frozen fingers. "My name is Seren," she managed, "and I know because I was supposed to be the one who killed them." Then the darkness claimed her. Seren woke to warmth and the smell of burning cedar. For a disorienting moment she thought she was dead. The afterlife, she had always imagined, would smell like forests. But then pain flooded back into her extremities, sharp and vicious, and she gasped, jerking upright on what turned out to be a bed piled high with furs. "Easy." A woman's weathered face appeared above her, hands pressing firmly against Seren's shoulders. "You nearly died 3 times during the night. Your body needs rest." "The pups." Seren's voice came out as a rasp. "Where are—" "Safe. Fed. Sleeping in the nursery with 4 guards and the Alpha himself standing watch." The woman's expression was unreadable. "You brought those children through a blizzard that killed 2 of our own scouts. No one understands how you survived, let alone kept 2 infants alive." "I had to." The words were simple because the truth was simple. They did not deserve to die for someone else's ambition. The door opened before the woman could respond. The Alpha entered, and the room immediately felt smaller. He had changed from his funeral clothes into dark leathers, and the hollow devastation in his eyes had been replaced by something harder, sharper. The look of a man who had been given a reason to live and intended to make someone pay for almost taking it away. Leave us, Mira. He did not look at the older woman as he spoke. His gaze was fixed entirely on Seren. I need answers, and I need them now. Mira hesitated, then bowed her head and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Silence stretched between them. My name is Calder, the Alpha said finally. And you are going to tell me everything. Who hired you to kill my children? How did you find them? Why did you choose to save them instead? And what exactly do you want in return? Seren pushed herself upright against the headboard, ignoring the protest of her battered body. I was not hired. I was commanded. There is a difference when the person giving orders has the power to destroy everyone you love. Calder's jaw tightened. Keep talking. I am an Omega from the Ashvale Pack. 3 moons ago, our Alpha formed an alliance with someone inside your territory. Someone who promised him the Thornwood lands in exchange for one simple task. End your bloodline before your pups came of age. Serene's hands clenched in the furs. I was chosen because I am expendable, a packless Omega with no family left to mourn her. They gave me the location, the timing, and a vial of poison. They expected me to finish the job and vanish into the mountains. But you did not. No. Her voice hardened. I looked at those children and I saw my brother. He was 3 years old when our previous Alpha decided his existence was inconvenient. I will not be the weapon that orphans someone else's family. Calder studied her for a long moment, and she could not read what passed behind his winter-gray eyes. You defied your Alpha. You committed treason against your own pack. You understand what that means? It means I can never go back. It means Ashvale will hunt me until I am dead or they are. Seren lifted her chin. It means I need protection, and you need answers. So let us make a deal, Alpha. Shelter me long enough to identify the traitor in your pack, and I will tell you everything I know about the alliance that tried to murder your children. Calder leaned forward, his presence overwhelming in the small room. And why should I trust someone who just admitted she was sent here to kill them? Seren met his gaze without flinching. Because I did not. Because they are alive. And because whoever betrayed you is still inside these walls, and the next assassin will not have a conscience to stop them. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video and subscribe. Calder did not answer immediately. He studied her with an intensity that made Seren feel like he was peeling back layers of skin to examine what lay beneath. Predator's eyes. A hunter deciding whether his prey was worth the chase. You want sanctuary, he said slowly. Protection from Ashvale in exchange for information. Yes. And if your information proves worthless? If you are lying to me right now, spinning tales to save your own skin? Then you can execute me yourself. Seren did not blink. I would rather die quickly by your hand than slowly by theirs. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, at her bluntness. Or recognition of the particular desperation that came from having nothing left to lose. I want a blood oath, Calder said. Your word alone means nothing to me. But magic does not lie. Seren's stomach clenched. Blood oaths were binding in ways that went beyond honor. They wove themselves into the soul, and breaking them meant a death more agonizing than any physical torture. But she had expected this. Had known, from the moment she chose to save those pups, that her life would never belong entirely to herself again. Agreed. Calder pulled a knife from his belt. The blade was old, etched with symbols that hummed with ancient power. Without ceremony, he drew it across his palm. Blood welled up, dark and rich, and he extended his hand toward her. Seren took the knife. The handle was warm from his grip, and she felt a strange pulse travel up her arm as her fingers closed around it. She made her own cut, quick and clean, then pressed her bleeding palm against his. The magic hit her like a lightning strike. She had expected pain. She had expected the binding sensation of an oath taking root. What she had not expected was the flood of something else entirely, a recognition so profound it stole her breath. Her wolf, dormant and subdued for years under Ashvale's brutal hierarchy, surged to the surface with a howl of desperate longing. Mate. The word thundered through her blood. Mate, mate, mate. Calder's hand spasmed around hers. His eyes went wide, the winter gray suddenly blazing with gold as his own wolf responded to the call. For one endless moment they stood frozen, palms pressed together. Magic and something far older binding them in ways neither had anticipated. Then Calder wrenched his hand away. He stepped back, chest heaving, his expression a war between shock and something that looked almost like fear. Seren's palm throbbed where their blood had mingled, and she could still feel it, the invisible thread now connecting them, pulling at her consciousness like a hook buried deep. That was not supposed to happen. His voice was rough, fractured. No. Seren pressed her bleeding hand against her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. It was not. They stared at each other across the suddenly charged space. The oath had taken hold. She could feel it, the binding promise settling into her bones. But wrapped around it, impossible to ignore, was the mate bond, newly awakened and already demanding acknowledgement. Calder turned away first. The oath stands. You have my protection until the traitor is found. After that, he paused at the door, his back rigid. We will discuss what happens after. He left without looking at her again. Seren sank back against the pillows, her wounded hand cradled against her chest, and wondered what she had just bound herself to. 3 days passed before Seren was strong enough to leave the healing quarters. Mira, the pack's head healer, proved to be a surprisingly gentle jailer. She brought meals, changed bandages, and answered questions with the careful neutrality of someone who had seen too much to trust easily. The Alpha lost his mate 2 years ago, Mira said on the second morning, unprompted. Childbirth complications. She held the twins once before she died. He has raised them alone ever since. Seren absorbed this information in silence. It explained the hollowness she had seen in Calder's eyes, the desperate ferocity with which he had reached for those bundles. He had already lost one person he loved. The thought of losing his children, too, must have been unbearable. On the 3rd day, Mira declared her fit to walk, and assigned a young warrior named Del to escort her through the stronghold. Seren suspected escort meant guard, but she did not protest. She was a stranger here, an admitted enemy, and Calder's protection only extended so far. The Thornwood stronghold was nothing like Ashvale. Ashvale had been cold stone and colder hearts, a fortress designed to intimidate. Seren had learned to walk with her head down, to speak only when spoken to make herself invisible. But Thornwood was alive. Children ran through the courtyards, shrieking with laughter as they chased each other between training warriors. The kitchen spilled warmth, and the smell of baking bread into the corridors. Wolves greeted each other with casual touches, shoulder bumps, hand clasps, the easy affection of a pack that felt safe within its own walls. It made something ache behind Seren's ribs. She had forgotten that packs could be like this, that wolves could live without fear poisoning every interaction. The Alpha built most of this, Del said, noticing her expression. After his parents died, he tore down half the old fortress and rebuilt it. Said wolves were not meant to live in prisons. Seren thought of Calder's hard eyes, his commanding presence, and the lethal grace with which he moved. It was difficult to reconcile that image with someone who would redesign his home so children could play safely in the courtyards. They passed the nursery, and Seren caught a glimpse through the open door. 2 cradles side by side, a woman humming softly as she rocked one, and Calder himself standing by the window, watching his children sleep with an expression of such raw tenderness that Seren had to look away. The monster she had been sent to destroy was not a monster at all. And somewhere in this warm, living place, someone had betrayed him completely. On the 4th night, Calder summoned her to his study. The room was smaller than Seren expected, lined with maps and books. A fire crackled in the hearth. Calder stood behind a heavy oak desk, and he was not alone. Theron stood at his right hand, arms crossed and expression suspicious. "Close the door," Calder said. Seren obeyed, acutely aware of Theron's hostile gaze tracking her every movement. She had learned from Del that Theron was the Alpha's second, his closest friend and most trusted advisor. If anyone would object to harboring an enemy Omega, it would be him. "You said you have information about the traitor." Calder's voice was flat, businesslike, as if the searing moment of the blood oath had never happened. As if the bond was not even now humming beneath Seren's skin, demanding acknowledgement. "I need specifics. Names. Evidence. Something I can act on." "I do not have names." "Not yet." Seren moved closer to the desk, keeping her movement slow and unthreatening. "But I have something better. I have a way to find them." Theron snorted. "Convenient. The assassin who failed her mission now claims she can solve all our problems." "I did not fail." Seren met his glare without flinching. "I chose. There is a difference." "Enough." Calder's command silenced them both. "Explain what you mean, Seren." "What way?" She had debated telling them this. Her gift was the reason Ashvale had chosen her for this mission, and it was also the reason she had survived, as long as she had. Revealing it meant exposing her greatest vulnerability. But the oath bound her to help find the traitor, and she could not do that while hiding her only useful weapon. "I can see bonds," she said quietly. "The connections between wolves. Loyalty, love, hatred, betrayal. They appear to me as threads of light, linking one person to another. The stronger the emotion, the brighter the thread." Silence. Theron looked at her like she had grown a second head. But Calder's expression shifted, his eyes narrowing with sudden, intense interest. "You are a bond seer." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I thought your kind were extinct." "Nearly. Ashvale killed most of us generations ago. Too dangerous, they said. Too difficult to control." Seren's jaw tightened. "My mother hid what I was until Ashvale discovered her. She died protecting my secret. I have been hiding ever since." "Then how did Ashvale know to send you?" "Someone told them. Someone who knew my mother's bloodline and saw an opportunity." Seren stepped closer to the desk. "That is why they chose me for this mission. They wanted me to infiltrate Thornwood, identify your weaknesses, and report back before completing the kill. A bond seer can find fractures in a pack's loyalty faster than any spy." Calder leaned forward. "Can you see the traitor's bond? The connection to Ashvale?" "Not from a distance. I need proximity. Physical closeness." Seren hesitated. "I need to be near enough to feel their threads. If you gather your inner circle, I can read each one." Theron stepped forward, his hostility suddenly sharpened by something that looked like fear. "You want us to let you near the Alpha's closest advisors? His council? His family?" "I want to find the person who tried to murder 2 infants," Seren said coldly. "If that makes you uncomfortable, perhaps you should ask yourself why." Theron snarled, but Calder raised a hand, stopping him. "Do it." The Alpha's voice was iron. "Tomorrow, I will assemble the council under the pretense of discussing increased border patrols. You will be there as my guest, and you will tell me what you see." He paused, his gray eyes boring into hers. "Can you do that without revealing what you are?" "I have been hiding what I am my entire life. One more performance will not break me." Calder nodded slowly. "Then we have a plan." Theron waited until Seren had left before speaking. "You trust her?" His voice was tight with barely contained frustration. "An Omega from the pack that tried to kill your children? I trust the oath." Calder moved to the window, staring out at the snow-covered courtyard. "And I trust what I felt when our blood mingled. The bond." Theron's tone made it clear what he thought of that. "Calder, mate bonds can be manipulated, faked. You know this." This one was not faked. Calder's voice dropped to something raw. "I felt it, Theron. My wolf recognized her. It has been silent since Alara died, and the moment that woman touched me, It woke up howling. Theron was quiet for a long moment. And if she is playing you? If this is all part of Ashvail's plan? Then I will kill her myself. Calder turned from the window, and his expression was carved from stone. But until I have proof of treachery, she is under my protection. And Theron? The Bond Seer gift is real. I saw the threads when we touched. Just for a moment during the oath. I saw every connection in the room, including yours. Theron went pale. Your loyalty blazed like fire, Calder said quietly. I have never doubted you, old friend, but now I have proof. He moved toward the door. Tomorrow, we find out who else in my pack can say the same. In the corridor outside, hidden in shadow, Seren pressed her back against the cold stone wall and tried to steady her breathing. He had seen the threads. During the oath, somehow, the bond had opened her gift to him, which meant he had also seen the thread connecting the two of them, the one that burned brighter than any other. Impossible to mistake, impossible to deny. He knew exactly what she was to him, and he had said nothing. The council meeting was held in the Great Hall, the same space where Seren had collapsed 5 days earlier. Now, instead of mourning clothes and empty coffins, the room held a long table surrounded by Calder's most trusted advisors. Seren stood in the corner, officially present as the Omega who saved the heirs, a symbol of the Alpha's mercy and the Pack's gratitude. No one questioned why she remained silent, watching. They assumed she was overwhelmed by the honor. They had no idea she was reading every thread in the room. 8 advisors, 8 sets of bonds spreading outward like spider silk, connecting them to mates, children, pack members, the Alpha himself. Most burned with loyalty, bright gold threads that pulsed with genuine devotion. 2 showed the cooler blue of respect, without deep attachment. Normal, expected. But one advisor, a silver-haired woman named Vesta who oversaw the Pack's trade agreements, had a thread that made Seren's blood run cold. It stretched not toward anyone in the room, but outward, through the walls, pointing southeast, toward Ashvail. And it was not blue or gold. It was red, the color of conspiracy, the color of active betrayal. Seren kept her expression neutral, but her heart hammered against her ribs. She had found the traitor. After the meeting dispersed, she waited in Calder's study, pacing before the fire until he arrived. The moment the door closed, she spoke. Vesta. Calder went still. You are certain? The thread leads directly to Ashvail. Red, not faded. This is not old resentment or a past connection. She is actively communicating with them. Seren turned to face him. She arranged the kidnapping. She told them about the nursery routines, the river path, everything. Calder's hands clenched at his sides. Vesta has served this pack for 30 years. She held my mother's hand when she died. She taught me to read trade ledgers when I was 12 years old. And she sold your children to your enemies. The silence that followed was devastating. Seren watched Calder's expression cycle through disbelief, denial, and finally a grief that looked almost physical. Why? The word came out broken. What could Ashvail possibly offer her? I do not know yet, but I intend to find out. Calder moved to the window, his back to her, shoulders rigid with tension. The firelight cast his shadow long across the floor. Seren found herself moving toward him without conscious decision, drawn by the bond that hummed constantly between them now, impossible to ignore. You should not be near me right now. His voice was rough. I do not have control. I know. She stopped an arm's length away. I do not care. He turned, and the raw pain in his eyes made her chest ache. Seren, you have been carrying this alone. The grief, the fear, the weight of this entire pack. You do not have to carry it alone anymore. I barely know you. You know me better than anyone. She held his gaze. You saw the threads during the oath. You know what I am to you. what you are to me." Calder's breath caught. "The bond does not mean—" "The bond means everything, and you know it." Seren stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. "I have spent my entire life being used, being invisible, being a weapon for other people's ambitions. And then I walked through your doors, half dead and terrified, and you gave me protection without asking for anything in return. You gave me a place to heal. You trusted my word when you had every reason not to. I had the oath. You had more than that." Her voice softened. "You felt it too. From the very first moment." Calder reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, his hand cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I am trying to be honorable," he said quietly. "You are vulnerable. You have nowhere else to go. I will not take advantage of that." "You are not taking anything." Seren leaned into his touch. "I am choosing. For the first time in my life, I am choosing something for myself. And I choose you." He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was desperate and fierce, all the grief and longing of the past days pouring out in the press of his lips against hers. Seren gasped into his mouth, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer as the bond between them blazed incandescent. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Calder pressed his forehead to hers. "After Vesta is dealt with," he said roughly, "after the pack is safe and Ashvale's threat is ended, I am going to court you properly. I am going to give you the choice you deserve, free from danger, free from obligation. And if I have already made my choice, then I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right one." Seren smiled against his lips. "I can accept those terms." They planned Vesta's arrest for the following evening. Calder wanted evidence beyond Seren's sight, something that would convince the council and prevent any question of the Alpha acting on the word of an outsider alone. Theron would search Vesta's quarters while she was occupied at dinner, looking for correspondence, payment records, anything tangible. But Ashvale moved faster. Seren was in the nursery, watching the twins sleep, when she felt it. A shift in the threads around her, a sudden flare of hostile intent that made her wolf snarl in warning. She spun toward the door just as it opened. Vesta stood in the threshold, a small vial clutched in her weathered hand. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but her eyes burned with something unhinged. I wondered how long it would take. Vesta stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "A bond seer. I should have recognized the signs. Your mother had the same look about her, always watching, always seeing too much." Seren positioned herself between Vesta and the cradles. "You knew my mother?" "I knew of her. Ashvale kept records of every bond seer they eliminated. Your bloodline was supposed to end with her." Vesta's smile was thin and cruel. Clearly, they were not thorough enough. "Why are you doing this? What did Ashvale promise you?" "Freedom." The word came out bitter. 30 years I have served this pack. 30 years of watching alphas rise and fall, of being passed over, dismissed, treated like furniture. Ashvale offered me a position of power, a seat on their council. All I had to do was remove a few obstacles. "Children." Seren's voice shook with fury. "You call murdering children removing obstacles? They were never supposed to die. The original plan was ransom, leverage, a way to control Calder until Ashvale was ready to strike." Vesta's expression flickered. "But you ruined that. You brought them back. And now the Alpha knows there is a traitor. My only option is to finish what I started and disappear before he finds me." She raised the vial. Wolf's bane, enough to stop 2 small hearts in seconds, and then, enough left for you. Seren lunged. She was not a trained warrior, but she was fast, and desperation gave her strength. She caught Vesta's wrist before the vial could reach the cradles, twisting hard. The older woman snarled and fought back with surprising ferocity. They crashed against the wall. The vial slipped, shattering on the stone floor. Vesta's elbow connected with Seren's jaw, sending stars exploding across her vision. You should have stayed dead in that blizzard, Vesta hissed, her hands closing around Seren's throat. You should have let nature take its course. Seren clawed at the fingers, cutting off her air. Her vision was darkening, her lungs screaming for oxygen. Behind her, one of the twins began to cry. The door exploded inward. Calder moved like death itself, crossing the room in 2 strides and ripping Vesta away from Seren with enough force to send the older woman crashing into the opposite wall. His eyes blazed gold, his wolf fully at the surface, and when he spoke, his voice was barely recognizable. You touched my mate. The words were a growl, inhuman and terrifying. You threatened my children. Calder. Serene's voice came out as a rasp, her throat on fire. Do not kill her. We need information. We need to know Ashvale's full plan. For a moment she thought he would not listen. The predator in his eyes wanted blood, wanted vengeance, wanted to tear apart the woman who had betrayed everything he loved. But then his gaze found Seren, and something in his expression shifted. Theron. His voice was ice. Take Vesta to the cells. Triple guard. No visitors until I say otherwise. Vesta laughed as Theron hauled her upright, the sound unhinged and wrong. It is too late. Ashvale is already coming. They will burn this pack to ash, and there is nothing you can do to stop them. Calder's jaw tightened. We will see about that. The interrogation took 3 hours. Vesta, faced with the evidence of her treachery and the promise of execution, eventually broke. Ashvale was not just coming. They were already on their way. A war party of 50 wolves, led by their alpha himself, planning to strike Thornwood at dawn. They will kill everyone, Vesta said flatly, all pretense of composure gone. Every adult, every elder, every wolf who could challenge their claim. They will keep the children as hostages to ensure compliance from the surrounding packs. And then they will absorb Thornwood's territory into their own. How long do we have? Calder's voice betrayed nothing, but Seren could feel his tension through the bond, a coiled spring ready to snap. Hours. They were waiting for my signal that the heirs were dead. Since I did not send it, they will assume I failed and proceed regardless. Calder turned to Theron. How many warriors can we muster? 30 who can fight. Another 20 if we arm the older adolescents. 50 against 50. Calder's mind was clearly racing. We need to evacuate the young and the elderly, the eastern caves. They are defensible and hidden. There is another option. Seren stepped forward, her bruised throat aching with every word. Ashvale's alpha, Fenric. I know him. I know his weaknesses. Every eye in the room turned to her. He is paranoid. He trusts no one, not even his own generals. If his forces were to receive conflicting orders, if they believed their alpha had changed the plan. She met Calder's gaze. I can forge his bond signature. Make it look like a command thread coming directly from him. You can manipulate bonds? Theron sounded horrified. I can create false impressions, temporary ones. Enough to cause confusion, to buy time. Seren's voice hardened. Enough to make Ashvale's wolves hesitate when they should be attacking. Calder studied her for a long moment. You would reveal your gift to the enemy. They would know what you are. They already want me dead. At least this way, my death would mean something. She lifted her chin. Let me fight for this pack, Calder. Let me earn my place here. He crossed the room in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands. You have already earned your place, 100 times over. Then let me protect it. Calder kissed her forehead, brief and fierce. Together. We do this together. Seren nodded, her heart pounding with fear and determination in equal measure. Dawn was coming, and with it, war. The Ashvale wolves emerged from the forest as the first gray light touched the sky, 50 dark shapes moving through the snow, silent and deadly, led by a massive wolf with fur the color of dried blood. Fenric. Even at a distance, Seren recognized the cruel set of his shoulders, the way he moved like the world owed him everything and had failed to deliver. She stood on the battlements beside Calder, watching the enemy approach. Below, Thornwood's warriors waited in formation. The elderly and children had been evacuated in the night. "Remember the plan," Calder said quietly. "You create confusion. I handle Fenric. And if the confusion does not work, then we fight until we cannot fight anymore." He caught her hand, squeezing briefly. "Stay alive, Seren. That is an order. I do not take orders from you." Despite everything, he smiled. "I know. That is one of the things I love about you." Before she could respond, Fenric's howl split the dawn, and the attack began. Seren reached deep into her gift, deeper than she had ever gone before. The threads of Ashvale's wolves blazed before her, hundreds of connections binding them to each other, to their alpha, to the pack they served. She found the command threads, the bonds of obedience that tied each warrior to Fenric's will. And she twisted. It was like plunging her hands into fire. Pain seared through her skull as she wove false impressions into the existing bonds, sending contradictory signals. Retreat, hold position, attack the left flank, protect the alpha, abandon the alpha. The effect was immediate. Ashvale's formation shattered. Wolves stumbled, confused, some turning on each other as the false commands warred with their true orders. Fenric's roar of fury echoed across the battlefield as his perfect ambush dissolved into chaos. Seren fell to her knees, blood streaming from her nose, her vision blurring at the edges. She had bought them time. Now it was up to Calder to finish it. She watched through fading consciousness as Calder launched himself from the battlements, shifting midair into a wolf of pure midnight black. He hit the ground running, tearing through the confused Ashvale ranks like a force of nature. Fenric met him in the center of the battlefield. The two alphas clashed with a violence that shook the earth, teeth and claws, blood and fury, two apex predators fighting for the right to survive. Seren tried to push herself upright, tried to see, but the world kept tilting sideways. Then she heard the yelp of pain. Her heart stopped. But it was not Calder who fell. Fenric crashed to the snow, his throat torn open, and his blood staining the white ground crimson. Calder stood over him in human form, chest heaving, covered in wounds that were already beginning to heal. "This ends now," Calder called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Your alpha is dead. Surrender, and you will be treated fairly. Continue fighting, and you will join him." For a moment, nothing moved. Then, one by one, the Ashvale wolves lowered their heads in submission. Seren let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. It was over. They had won. Then strong arms were lifting her, and Calder's face swam into view, terrified and relieved in equal measure. "I told you to stay alive," he said roughly. "I did." She managed a weak smile. "Mostly." He carried her off the battlefield himself, refusing to let anyone else touch her. And even through the pain and exhaustion, Seren felt something she had never expected to feel again. Safe. She felt safe. Recovery took 2 weeks. The damage from overusing her gift was not physical, but mental. A deep exhaustion that left Seren sleeping for days at a time. When she finally woke fully, she found flowers by her bedside, fresh every morning, and a worn chair beside the bed where Calder had clearly spent many hours. "You should be running your pack," she said when he appeared in the doorway. "Not sitting vigil over me." "My pack is fine. Theron is handling the integration of the Ashvale wolves who chose to stay. The others have been escorted beyond our borders." Calder crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. "You almost died. But I did not." "Seren." His voice cracked. "I watched you collapse. I watched blood pour from your face while I was too far away to catch you. I have never been so terrified in my life." She reached for his hand. "I am here. I survived. We both did." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "The oath is fulfilled. Vesta has been dealt with. Ashvale is no longer a threat. You are free to go if you wish. Seren studied him, the tension in his shoulders, the careful neutrality of his expression. He was bracing himself for rejection, she realized, preparing to let her walk away because he had promised her the choice. You are an idiot, she said fondly. He blinked. What? I just nearly killed myself protecting this pack. I fought beside your wolves. I bled for your children. She tugged on his hand, pulling him closer. Why would I ever want to leave? Because you deserve freedom. Because you should not feel obligated. Calder. She silenced him with a finger against his lips. I spent my entire life being told where to go, what to do, who to be. And then I made a choice. I chose to save your pups. I chose to walk through that blizzard. I chose to tell you the truth, to help you find the traitor, to stand beside you in battle. She moved her hand to cup his cheek. And now I am choosing to stay. Not because of the bond, though it is there. Not because I have nowhere else to go, but because this place feels like home. Because these people feel like pack. Because you. Her voice softened. You feel like mine. Calder's composure finally shattered. He gathered her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. I love you, he said, the words muffled but unmistakable. I have loved you since you snarled at a room full of strangers and refused to let go of my children. Seren laughed, tears pricking her eyes. I love you too, even when you are being noble and self-sacrificing and insufferable. I am never insufferable. You are frequently insufferable, but you are mine, so I will tolerate it. He pulled back to kiss her properly, and the bond between them sang with joy. The bonding ceremony was held on the winter solstice, the longest night of the year. Tradition said that bonds forged in darkness would burn all the brighter when dawn came. Seren thought it was fitting. She and Calder had found each other in the darkest moment of both their lives. Everything that came after would be light. The great hall was transformed. Candles lined every surface, their flames reflected in garlands of silver and white. The pack gathered in their finest clothes, faces bright with joy. In the front row, Rowan and Briar sat in their nurse's arms, too young to understand, but somehow knowing that tonight was important. Seren wore a dress the color of fresh snow, embroidered with silver thread that caught the candlelight. Mira had woven winter roses into her hair, and even Theron had grudgingly admitted she looked acceptable. Calder waited for her at the altar, dressed in black with his family crest emblazoned over his heart. When she appeared at the end of the aisle, his expression transformed into something so openly adoring that Seren felt her cheeks flush. You are staring, she murmured as she reached him. I plan to stare at you for the rest of my life. He took her hands. I hope you are prepared for that. I suppose I can endure it. The elder who performed the ceremony spoke of loyalty and choice, of bonds freely given and faithfully kept. When it came time for their vows, Calder went first. I promise to protect you, but never to cage you, to stand beside you, never in front of you, to love you in all your forms, all your moods, all the days we are given. His thumbs brushed across her knuckles. You walked through a storm to save my children. You walked through fire to save my pack. I will spend every day earning the gift of your presence in my life. Seren blinked back tears. I promise to challenge you when you are wrong and support you when you are right. To use my gifts in service of our pack, our family, our future. To choose you every morning and every night, for as long as my heart beats. She squeezed his hands. You gave me freedom when you could have demanded servitude. You gave me trust when you had every reason for suspicion. I will spend every day proving that trust was not misplaced. The elder bound their hands together with a silver cord, ancient words sealing what their hearts had already declared. When the ritual was complete, Calder kissed her with such tender ferocity that the entire hall erupted in cheers. The celebration lasted until the sky began to lighten. There was dancing and feasting, and Seren found herself welcomed into conversations, treated not as an outsider, but as pack, as family. Later, she and Calder slipped away to their chambers. He loved her slowly in the candlelight, murmuring promises that made her shiver with joy. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her shoulder. "Tell me something," he said softly. "Something I do not know." Seren considered. "When I was walking through that blizzard, certain I would die, I kept going because of the pups. But in the very last stretch, when the lights appeared, I kept going because something told me I would find more than safety here." She tilted her head to look at him. "I think my wolf knew, even then, that you were waiting." Calder's arm tightened around her. "I was waiting. I just did not know it yet. And now? Now I cannot imagine a world where you are not beside me." He kissed her forehead. "Your turn. Ask me something. Do you regret it? Any of it? The chaos, the danger, and the way we started?" "Not for a single moment." His voice was certain. "You brought my children back to me. You exposed a traitor who would have destroyed everything I love. You stood beside me in battle when you could have run." He cupped her face, gray eyes bright in the candlelight. "You are the best thing that has ever walked through my doors, Seren. I will never regret a single second of how we began." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, tasting promises on his lips. Outside, the first light of dawn crept over the mountains, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. The longest night was over. The new day was beginning. Seren had walked through a blizzard expecting to die, carrying 2 pups she had been sent to kill. Instead, she had found a home, a family, a love she had never dared to imagine. Fair trade, she thought as sleep claimed her, safe in her mate's arms, the best she had ever made. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe. It is free and helps more people discover these tales.